Hi folks, Eric here with Baileigh Industrial. We're going to look at the LF-20 machine, or our Lockformer. We're going to go over a lot of our attachments and tooling for it. We're going to do a lot of profiles and tool change out. So let's get the gloves on and get after it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to discuss here is the optional flange attachment for this machine. Now this again is an option, doesn't come with the machine, it is a flange attachment. The adjustments on here are relatively simple. The dial on the front here is for your gauge, or the material that you're working with. The tighter that you have this set to, the more tension is put on this spring. So you want that set to your gauge that you're working with. In this case, we're going to be processing 22 gauge. There's a little yellow line on here to line that up so that you have it set correctly. And the tension on this spring is correlating to the tension that's on this infeed roller. When you put the material through, you're going to engage the infeed roller, and that's going to push harder or less on your material, and it's going to affect how your material tracks as it's being bent. And then there is a little bolt down here that you can set, tighten the jam nut on there so that you never go past the travel point that you want to set it at. Another adjustment that is on here is for the shaft for the feed roll itself. Now the screw that's on the back side here, that it's spring loaded, affects how tight this shaft and this wheel is. So the tighter you have this screw, the more pressure is put on this shaft in feed roller, and the material will feed better with the right amount of pressure. If this is too soft or too light of an adjustment, the material will slip and not feed properly through the attachment. Okay, so we got our material, 20 gauge galvanized material. We've got our gloves on, got our glasses on. And first thing we want to do is put a small pre-bend on that very corner that we're going to feed through. And that's what that slot is for on the table itself, on the attachment. We're going to put our material in that slot and roll that over and put that little tiny pre-bend on the corner. No real science to it, just going to get a nice little pre-bend in the corner. Just like that. Turn the machine on. We got our roller engaged for tracking. Then we're just going to put it in here. And you can see it doesn't even want to feed very good. I have to really push to get it through. Not easy at all. So you can see, very difficult to pull through, very wavy. Lots of burrs, definitely not the way to do it, and dangerous because you can make a pretty sharp edge on it and get hurt. So let's adjust it the right way and run through a good profile. All right, so we've got a brand new piece of material here, our 20 gauge galvanized, and we're going to run this through here. We're going to make an adjustment on this cap screw. So the first thing we want to do again is make our pre-bend on that very corner, just like that. Turn the machine on. And go ahead and run this through. Now first thing I want to do is engage my guide roller that's on here. So I want to get that in position. Then we're going to go ahead and get this in the center. And it should track through all on its own and make a nice profile. Okay, so we've got our first good profile here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing again, but what we're going to do is we're going to disengage this guide roller while it's making a profile so you understand what this is doing. What you'll find is that the material will track very sporadically, and we'll go from a nice straight edge profile to a profile that's extremely wavy so that you understand what this is doing and kind of the tension behind it and how that works. So same thing like we did before, we're going to put in our little pre-bend in that corner again. Just like that. Turn the machine on, and I'm going to let it feed, and when it gets halfway through, I'm going to disengage this, and we'll show you the result. And we'll disengage. So what we have here might be a little difficult to see. from here to here was nice and straight, and from this point on it's got a little waviness to it. And then what you could see too is without this engaged, the material is going to walk a little bit more than it should. So using this correctly, having the right tension is very, very important. Now we're going to go through the uninstalling of the flange attachment. It's pretty simple. I've got these bolts already loose. That's basically what is holding that on. There's 2 bolts here in the center, and then there's 2 over here on the other side. So we're going to just unthread these bolts out. Got our bolts off, and then we should be able to just lift that right off the machine. Pretty simple to do. And as you can see just by looking at it, what you're doing is splining this gear up with the gears that are on the machine already. Very simple to install. Drop it in place, line your bolts up, tighten it in place, and it's good to go. Okay, so we've got a new piece of material, 20 gauge galvanized, and what we're going to do is focus on the Pittsburgh profile on this machine. Now the shafts that are in the center of this housing have a profile on them. This is the Pittsburgh profile, and that is the rolls that come with this machine. So it already has that roll set on it. The rolls that you see kind of on the outside of this machine are a different roll set that we'll cover later. But what these are is you have shafts that are extended out for different roll sets to be put on here. So we'll go over that in a little bit. So the first thing to note here is the adjustment bolts on the top. Now what these are doing is holding this entire housing down so that the gears can spline to the main drive gears that are further down in this base. How tight you have these or how loose you have these affects your profile and affects how the material feeds through. If these are set too light, material will slip, profile will be incomplete, and you'll just be a bad bed all the way around. If they're set too tight, your bend will go through usually, but it'll be very, very compressed and maybe a little bit waved on the end as well if it's too tight. The other thing that you want to always have adjusted correctly are your infeed bars and your outfeed bar on this side. The infeed bar is probably the most important between the two, because if you're not feeding the material in at the correct depth into the roll, your profile is going to come out incorrect. So calibrating this bar, tightening it down in place, and having it set at the right depth is important. And once you have that in place, it might be even a good idea just to document the number basically from the bar to the edge of the table or something like that, so that it always stays the same. And on the outfeed bar, it's there, but the material will go through the rolls, really not utilizing the outfeed bar, but it is there just for a guide. So once that guide is set, you again would want to probably document that number from the edge of the guide to the edge of the table, or come up with some kind of reference. Don't have to, but it's nice to have that noted so you know where it's always at. So now that we've kind of gone over the adjustments, the bars, the pressure bolt here for that housing, we're going to go ahead and run a profile through. Now it's important to note there is a guard that comes with this machine that covers this entire carriage or rolls. We have it removed just for filming purposes, but absolutely please put that on, leave that on when running the machine. Very important. So for filming reasons, we have removed it. Do not do that with your machine. So we're going to go ahead and turn it on. I'm going to get it started. Got to give it just a little bit of a push to get it engaged. And that's basically it. And then it's going to track through on its own, making that profile. And that should be your Pittsburgh profile. So now we're going to discuss doing a tool change out on the LF-20 machine. The side of the carriage here has your shafts that are extended out for all that interchangeable tooling that you can put on the machine. So the first thing we want to do is remove this plate to get access predominantly to the bottom shafts and be able to get to those and loosen them. So I've got these screws already pre-loosened, and what we're going to do is take these off. This plate will then be removed, and now we have access to all the shafts. Now we can take our Allen wrench and we can loosen up, take off our cap screw, And these cap screws and washers all come with the roll sets as well. And then we'll take our shaft, our roll off the shaft. And there is a keyway on there as well, which does come with the roll sets as well. So you got to make sure you have that in place. Now it's important to note every one of these rolls is different, and it's a slow shaping process on each one of these rolls. So it's important to note when you put on a die set on the end of these shafts, you're going to get a diagram with each die set. And it's going to indicate the sequential order as to where to put those tools. They will be engraved. The top one is going to be T1, T2s, T3, T4, and so on. The bottoms are going to be B1, B2, B3, and so on. So you can get them married up and correct. So it's important to make sure you've got them in the right order. Otherwise, material won't feed through, it'll get stuck, or you'll just get a bad profile. And to put it back on, very simple, just put your keyway back on the shaft and slide your roll back in place. And then put the cap screw with that washer back on. And then take our Allen wrench and just snug it up real good. And now if they're all in order, we should be good to go. We'll put the plate back on as well here, and then we'll do a right angle profile. All right, so we got a fresh piece of material, 20 gauge galvanized again, and we're going to run a profile through the LF-20 using the right angle roll profile that's on it. Now, the main thing that you really want to check here, make sure you have correct, is that in-feed bar where it's feeding into the rolls. If that bar and you're pushing against that bar is set incorrectly, you're going to feed at the wrong depth, be it too deep or too shallow. That'll affect the length of your right angle, how tall that angle actually is going to be. Same thing on the outfeed roll. You want to make sure you have this set correct so that the material can feed through and not hit the outfeed bar and get jammed. And you also don't want it too far away so it can support the material as well. And again, we have the guard off just for video purposes. There's a guard that goes over top of all these rolls. Put that guard back on when you're using the machine. Just have it off for video purposes. So let's go ahead and turn it on and run it through. There you got the right angle roll. Now on this side of the machine we have the drive cleat tool set that we offer for the machine. And basically what we've done is installed it, and how we did that is put our cap screws, take our rolls and slide them in place and tighten these cap screws in place. It's important to note that each roll is marked. Top number 1, it's going to have T1 on it. The bottom number 1 roll is going to have a B1 on it, and so on all the way down the line so you don't get them confused. There is also a diagram with that roll set that's going to come with to show you as well. As far as this tool set goes, this one cap screw here is the shorter cap screw out of the bunch. Otherwise they're all the same. So that one cap screw you'll find will work for that roll set only, for that top number 2 roll set. And then the other thing you want to have set correctly are your in-feed bar and your out-feed bar. Now these are the ones that come with it. Basically this bar needs to be in line with the chassis or frame of the machine so that the material feeds correctly, and likewise on this side so that it receives it and takes it out correctly as well. Now we're doing a drive cleat, so we've got 20 gauge material here, galvanized, sheared to 2 inches in width so that it forms correctly, spans across the roll, and we come out with a good form. So we're going to go ahead and fire it up and show you how it's done. Okay, so we're going to do a drive cleat profile on the LF-20. Important quick disclaimer here, we have the guard removed on the chassis of the machine so the rolls are fully exposed. Do not operate it this way at your shop or at your home. Not the safe way to do it, but we're just doing it this one time around to show you for video reasons. So first thing, get that machine powered up and feed it through. And And there's our drive cleat. So again, just to reiterate, the major components that you need to have set correctly, no matter what tooling profile you have on the machine, is your pressure setting, these two bolts here, and that's determining how tight the top roll and bottom roll marry up to each other. If you have these loose, these rolls are going to be gapped more. It's going to not completely shape the material correctly. That's going to cause a jam maybe, or just a bad part. So this setting, pressure setting, is very important to have correct. The other thing is your in-feed bar and out-feed bar, so that the material comes into that specific roll at the right depth and gets shaped and formed correctly. So those are really the 2 points on the table that you really need to pay attention to. And then some other basic things on the machine itself. Come on down here. We've got the guard off on the front. There's a series of grease certs on here, and these are going directly to each shaft. So very easy to service and to grease, maintain, hit those periodically, and that'll keep it running for a long time. Motor is right here. Belt is down inside here. There's a slotted system or rail that this motor sits on. Real easy to adjust if you need to increase that tension on the belt as it wears in over time, and loosen the bolts, slide it accordingly, and get good tension on the belt, and it should drive real good.